with DODO, we are targeting the green lending market. So green loans are loans that help companies access cheaper rates on their loans that they use if they first measure and reduce their emissions. So today, this is a £500 billion market, but by the end of the decade, it's looking to be worth over £50 trillion alone. So I'm Jack, I'm one of the co-founders of DODO, and today I want to share with you the two problems that banks are facing with this market. The first is that banks can only issue green loans to small businesses that have measured their emissions. And the second is that small businesses account for 1 in every 3 loans, but only 10% are measuring their emissions today. So this is a massive opportunity that banks and the financial sector are missing out on, given the size of the lending and SME market. At DODO, our mission and our vision is to help banks to actually unlock the green loan market for their small business customers. So how does that work and how do we do it? To start, we make it very easy for small businesses to share their data with us. So through a secure API, they can connect their accounting software directly to our platform. We've integrated with over 20 accounting tools today, and that gives us everything that we need to measure their emissions. Now, using that financial data, we're converting over 1,500 expenses every minute to give banks a fast and accurate view of all of their small business customers' emissions to date. And as a start for a bank, the first benefit they receive for that is it helps them to streamline their ESG reporting to save them costs and save them time around that process, which is incredibly tricky today, and particularly with the incoming regulation that exists. However, we want to go beyond just carbon reporting, and we're introducing our green lending marketplace for banks to interact with their small business customers. So using the exact same data, we can help small businesses to access very tailored, personalized loans based on their carbon footprint and help them to access loans at a cheaper rate for the first time. There are benefits for both banks and small businesses. For banks, we help them to reduce the cost of their emissions reporting. We also help them to access a new market in small business green lending. And for SMEs, they get a way to measure their entire company's carbon footprint, to understand where they need to start reducing those emissions, and also access green loans at a cheaper rate. And we're targeting 2 of the fastest growing markets. The enterprise carbon accounting market is just worth over £11 billion, while the green loan market is worth over £500 billion today. And we plan to tackle that market in 2 ways. The first is with our business model. We generate our revenue directly from banks and make our product free for small businesses to use. And the second strategy is with our go-to-market. Once we've onboarded a banking customer, they invite all of their small businesses to our platform, where we can start to upsell green loans in the future to generate additional referral fees from small businesses. And we're a team experienced in the lending and enterprise products. We brought on our first hire, Ricardo, who was previously the CTO at a supply chain reporting platform. My co-founder, Chaba, has over 14 years of experience. He's twice been the CTO at tech companies and recently launched his own B2B VAT reporting platform. And I've previous experience in the lending market, having been the first hire at Portify, where we helped over 300,000 gig workers to access interest-free credit. We have launched our product and it is generating revenue in the market today. So we've helped over 100 small businesses to measure their emissions, processing over £40 million of transactions and
minute warning,
measuring over 24,000 tons of CO2. We're also entering into 2 pilots with 2 banks, one in the UK and one globally. And we've also built up our own pipeline of enterprise companies looking to use our platform. Our next milestone is to launch our green loans product into the market alongside our banking customers, so that we can help the 200 million small businesses globally to measure their emissions and access green loans at a cheaper rate. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Let me bring in our awesome investor panelists and hand things over. This time, Matthias, do you want to take things away? Or Matthias or Matthias? I'm not entirely sure.
Matthias.
Matthias, ich sollte das wissen. Okay.
Oh, sehr gut.
Yeah.
Okay. Jack. So thank you very much for your presentation. Let me fire a couple of questions so that it's easier for you to pack them into the story when you answer it. So is this about the direct emissions of an SME, or does it include the whole supply chain? I assume it includes the whole supply chain. If it does, how do you get the data? From whom do you get it? What type of data do you get? How do you deal with the fact that global supply chains are intransparent? And there are actors in the supply chain that make money from the intransparency, which are probably not helping you at all. Could you talk a little bit about this, please?
Yes, and thank you for the question on that as well. I think it's a very, very interesting topic. So I think to answer the first question, we do deal with not just a small company's direct energy and fuel usage, but also their entire supply chain. The way that we tackle that is first using a method called the spend-based method. If you've come across it before, which just it says, okay, we know how much they spent on a given category. We use an open source database to then convert that into emissions. So it's the version which gives us the least insight. But for us, it's important, and for small businesses, one of the key blockers is actually getting started. So for us, we allow them to cover 100% of their emissions at a less rate of accuracy within that. We then look at over time how we can then ask them for direct product usage. So rather than using the spend based, we can ask them how much kilos of a product that they've purchased in their supply chain or used. And going even further over time, we're looking at how they can actually invite their own suppliers into the platform to provide their own emissions data, so that we can understand exactly what that purchase was and how much that equates in terms of emissions for that supplier. So I've said sort of three areas. We break it down into, on a graph, it would be sort of time to get the data versus accuracy. We're looking first and foremost to get as much data as possible and as much emissions automated, and then looking further and further on how we can make that more accurate.
Okay. And maybe another question. Who is your client? Is it the lender who provide the financing, or is it SME?
Yes, so it's our client would be the lender. So they have a problem in that they need to, under regulations in the EU and beyond, to measure all of the customers that they lend to, regardless of green lending or not. And so that's kind of problem A that we solve, and problem B is how to actually deploy the capital. So that's where we sort of offer our value to the lending businesses.
Got it. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Tim?
Yeah, all right. Never sure about the order.
Just so always feel free to jump in whenever you've got a question, folks.
Okay, sweet. Thank you. Thanks so much for the pitch. Really, really interesting case. I'm wondering a bit, where exactly do the SMEs come in? So are the SMEs in some way connected to you, or is the bank coming to you like, hey, we want to give out green loans? And then you said you use these 20 different softwares like accounting tools. So do you get kind of the data from the accounting tools, which SMEs have done an assessment, and then you can provide that to the bank, or do you connect to both? Or how exactly does how are you exactly the middleman?
Yeah, it's an important question. So we sell directly into banks and lending companies. They distribute our product directly to small businesses, where once they sign up, they can then connect their accounting software. So we know roughly around 10% of small businesses have measured their emissions. So it's quite formidable challenge within that for them. And so we have to streamline that process. And then within the platform, we have to embed that banking partner that we're working with, their green loan function, to give them a view. So it's a nice system in that a company can see, and a lot of our research has shown this actually, a small business can see their emissions, see if they took out a green loan for something like solar panels, they can see the exact amount of energy and emissions that they would save every year from taking out that. So we have a nice system in which we can facilitate both, and sort of a win-win-win for all parties involved.
Okay, so basically, I'm an SME, and I approach the bank like, hey, I want a green loan, and then the bank is kind of telling me, hey, we actually have this SaaS tool implemented. We can actually do the measurement for you, and then you are able to apply for the green loan.
Exactly, and I think just to add to that as well, a bank currently has that challenge where they need to measure all of their small business emissions for all of their lending products. So our platform will get distributed to all of their small business customers, and that's where we will also look at how we can facilitate green lending in the future with them. But also in that specific use case you're talking about, how they can, if they say I'm looking for a green loan, then our platform does the exact same thing.
All right, okay, and then who's your like buying persona at the bank? Like I'm just imagining these like old-fashioned German banks in my head that of course there's a transition, but like how easy is it and who do you talk to actually get that done?
We're very lucky to be part of the MasterCard Start Path program. So half of our leads have come directly in from that program itself, and it's given us quite a lot of power to get in, which is great, and nice facilitation of those introductions. In terms of who we speak with, it can vary. Our probably core persona is someone involved in finance or lending, so head of lending. Secondary persona, which we see quite a lot more, is either climate finance or ESG lending, anything around sort of sustainability within there. And I think the third one is around partnerships or innovation. So it's quite a new area. I think it's a tough one to crack from their point of view. And so there are kind of three personas that we would work with.
Yeah, cheers. I'll be really curious to see also with like Doconomy and Ecolytic, maybe there's like a good like integration there, because I think they have a bit of a similar, like different focus, but they're also like a SaaS tool for banks. So maybe there's a partnership there.
Tie up. For sure, yeah. I mean, we've spoken to them in the past, and yeah, I think there's probably something one day to understand that. But yeah, I agree.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And Avina.
Hi, Jack.
Hi.
Thanks for the presentation. I want to ask about your pricing point and monetization strategy. I think you're doing quite a number of products, right, from the monitoring up to the green loan. So how are you monetizing each one of them?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. For us, we generate our revenue directly from banks and lending companies. We're charging based on a per company measured basis. So that's where we would start. And our product is free for the small business to use. So that's where we sit in today, helping to measure those emissions. And that's where we generate the bulk of our revenue. In the future, what we'll be doing is generating additional referral fees from the loans that we help to facilitate. That will come into place in the next sort of 6 to 12 months is where we would see that. So it's quite a new area also, but today it's generated directly from the bank.
What about service provider referral fees? So you connect them with people that can install the solar, then you get referral fees on both sides.
Yeah, very interesting. I think that is another part of that, where the challenge also for a company is how to actually set up their solar panels that they're going to be using the loan for. I think that's something that we will be looking into as well. I think it's a problem that we'll look at down the line first and foremost. But yeah, it's a great point.
Or you just pre-suggested to them, hey, your emissions numbers don't look great. You could add rooftop solar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, Avina, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, definitely interesting. Add rooftop solar and get the bank finance for it. So what is your pricing point actually for the bank? I'm wondering, how much you charge the bank to calculate emission for one company, for example.
Yeah, it would range. So we're looking really at the small business market that they have with their customers. We're sort of estimating anywhere from a minimum of 50,000 right up to 250 based on the total number of customers that they would have. So we're aiming for quite a large enterprise market today. We will have a facilitation of a price point for smaller companies with smaller customers that they have, but anywhere from sort of £2 to £10 per year per customer is what we're looking at. Customer measured.
Okay. And my last question related to green loans, right? What are the banks looking at in terms of, green loans checklist, basically, in terms of how, you can fit your solutions into the green lending essentially, because it's not just how much emissions, right, basically that they would be looking at.
Yeah, it's a very important point. I think one of the things that really excites us is that the sustainability linked loans, which is a specific area of the market, and these are loans that if a company starts to reduce their emissions over a number of years and they hit their targets, then they get lower and lower interest rates there. So that's very easy, or not too much of a challenge for a big company who has measured their emissions and has a team, but it's impossible for a small business. So we sync that data actually on a daily basis to understand what their emissions are over time, and so we can actually facilitate that market itself. I think specifically to the question you're asking around not just the green lending and their emissions, but also what they're using the funds for, I think is an important question. And I think we can start to see that potentially by the drop in their emissions over time also.
And potentially offer loans for them to then be able to qualify for carbon credits with the projects they're then doing, if you want to really eat your cake and have it too, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the thing that we're very excited about in this market is that there are so many opportunities to potentially use the data to understand it, to help small businesses, to connect them in with different services. I think that vision exists for us. We kind of want to be that integrator and that facilitator over the next few years. But I think we're very focused on our core problem to date, which is around the banking sector and helping to measure small business loans and helping them to access these green loans for that market.
So when it smells too good to be true, it probably is. What's the hard part here? What's the problem? What are we missing?
I think the hard part is actually how to do this at scale. The first question from Matthias is around how do we get the accuracy of that data? And I think that's why I sort of went into that plan around. We know that if a small business gets sent a form to say, fill in what your emissions are, the uptake is so low, given that they don't have the time, the budget, or the resources. So we've gone down this automated route where we say, okay, we want to get all of that emissions data first. It might not be the most accurate way, but it certainly is the fastest way to get that company set up. The big challenge, the kind of secret sauce for us, is how we continue to gain more and more accuracy with that automation.
Awesome, thank you.
Jack, may I ask a follow-up question, please? To what extent are you also working with regulators to make sure they are, in fact, comfortable with what you're doing, and to also make sure that the lenders can be confident that if they engage with your company, that they are really within the regulation that is necessary for them to be able to make loans?
I think I'd break my answer down in two ways. The first is that our methodology still follows all of the international framework and standards to measure emissions. So even for another company, we're still doing it in a way that actually says, like, yes, we are compliant in our emissions gathering and emissions data. I think the second thing is that today, very little exists. It's for banks, they just use an estimate themselves without engaging with the small business. And they just say, okay, we think these emissions are X based on their size and their industry. So we're keeping a very close eye on that regulation. I think the good news for us today is that we're more than compliant and provide more data than the regulations ask for today. But as we continue on and that regulation gets a bit more strict, we're going to be continuing to improve the accuracy of that product. But today it is as compliant as it is in the market, and even more so.
To me, it seems that you want the regulation to become a little bit more strict and better defined, because right now almost anybody can compete with you, and it's still better than doing nothing, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think I think it goes beyond even what we want. I think the regulation is going in that area, to be honest. The kind of area of climate finance didn't probably exist 10 years ago, whereas we've seen such a huge
acceleration in some of that regulation, and we know that plans are only going to be accelerating as the targets get harder and harder to reach. I think even just separate on that regulation, a lot of these companies that we're working with, banks particularly, have 2030 and 2050 targets that they also are reporting to their shareholders every year. So even if that regulation doesn't, they still have a target that they need to hit.
Good, interesting.
Thank you.
I have a last
Go ahead,
question,
Avina.
actually, just for fun. Why is the name DODO?
That's a good one. I meant to ask that as well.
Yeah, I think when we had to think about what we wanted to say through the platform, the dodo, the bird, was the most popular case of where we have had that impact. I think we're probably humanity recognized that we've had such an impact on the world, and this sort of symbol of extinction. And we wanted to have that to kind of draw on the sand to say, like, we don't want that to happen. We want to have a positive force. Coupled with the fact that it's a 4-letter name, which always helps in the startup world, I think was our secondary reason.